I am Mark Wilson, President of the Florida Chamber of Commerce. And today's an important day in Florida. We all just came from the State of the State, where we heard from our state's leader, our governor, about job creation and about the numbers and about how Florida's on the right track to growing the private sector. And 2 months ago, I stood at this very podium and announced the 2012 jobs agenda for the business community, where we laid out priorities that ranged from lowering the cost of unemployment compensation, lowering workers' compensation costs, making taxes fair. We talked about international trade and manufacturing, and we talked about how Florida's on the right track to prosperity. And what we need to do is make sure that we're not distracted by these big claims from out-of-state and foreign casino operators. And so at a time when Florida's priority should be growing the private sector, the most important conversation we can have on day one of session is to say, let's put this massive distraction aside. Let's focus on growing the private sector, continuing to grow the jobs in Florida. And let's put this conversation off. This hasn't worked in any other state in America, and I'll talk briefly about that. But standing with me here today are many of the state's leaders, from the cabinet to other statewide business organizations, to members of the House and Senate that have looked at this issue. And this is one of these issues where the more you know about this issue, the more clear it becomes that this is a bad bet for Florida. And that's what we're here to talk about today. So the group that's here today is here to defend Florida from this massive attempt to add mega destination casinos to our state. As you've heard me say dozens of times, this is a case where what happens in Vegas should stay in Vegas. And this clearly is a bad bet for Florida.
I firmly believe we need less gambling in our state, not more. We cannot allow our state to head in a direction where we authorize more gambling and compromise our communities and the legacy of a family-friendly state for our children, for my niece, for my nephews. That is not the type of state in which we wish to live. Florida is well known for our pristine beaches, our incredible wildlife, and our family-friendly destinations. We must preserve Florida's character for future generations. As Chief Legal Officer, I cautioned before, once this starts, it will not remain in South Florida. It will open our state up for potentially casinos in every county in our entire state. And I am firmly opposed to the expansion of mega casinos in our state. At this time, I'd like to introduce my friend and our Chief Financial Officer and fellow Cabinet member, Jeff Atwater.
Thank you, General. The legislature gathers now to dedicate precious resources. They'll work and they'll debate the great ideas of our time. And they'll be using their energy, their commitment, their belief in the future of Florida to allocate those precious resources. So in some senses, people will be saying with those precious resources, where they allocate them, they'll be laying down a certain bet. For most people who've never had the opportunity to come to Florida, Florida's not a place, it's an idea. It's the kind of place where they put all their spare change in a jar throughout the year to save their money and come visit. It's an idea that in their mind, the rivers all run clear, they're the fountain of youth. The Everglades stretch forever. The rolling hills are covered in orange trees that bloom year-round. We have world-class attractions, beaches that are the most pristine and beautiful in the world. We have options. We have options. We've been blessed with an abundance of opportunities that we can launch people to space and grow the food that feeds the country in the winter months. We have high-tech industry. We have low-tech industry. We have small businesses and main streets that still thrive. This is not an investment that Florida needs to make in its future.
You probably are tired of hearing me talk about this, but I won't say but a few things. But I think yesterday's hearing in the Senate was instructive in a number of ways. First of all, we did get an admission from those who are proposing this legislation that it would be the single largest expansion of gaming, not only in the history of this state, but of any state in the Union. The largest expansion of gambling that we've ever seen. This is bad for business, it's bad for our communities, it's bad for our families, and it's bad legislation for the state of Florida.